I'm Geraldine Baird. I was born in 1950 in the Royal Borough of Rutherglen in a little street off Stonelaw Road, very near the main street. And I've lived in Rutherglen all my life, and I really, really love the people in Rutherglen as a place.
So the odd thing about Rutherglen is, no, it's not odd, but I mean it's not part of Glasgow. Whereas the other side of the river, as you go along there, absolutely is. What's all that about?
Thereby hangs a bitter tale, because in the 60s they actually became part of Glasgow and the local people were not happy. They didn't want to be all that Glasgow riffraff, but they didn't say that, but it was underlying. So we joined with Glasgow, which meant we lost our council, our borough council, and we thought in effect any power. And that went on for a decade or so, and then I think they fought to get it back. And of course, what the hangover of that is that a lot of the artefacts and books and history of Rutherglen went into Glasgow, never to be returned, and they won't give us them back. And there's some in the Mitchell, there's some in the, I mean, really expensive paintings. Now, this is hearsay, I'm not getting any empirical evidence, but that's another gripe in Rutherglen. There seems to be, of course, when the borough started way back hundreds of years ago, Glasgow was just a hamlet. Rutherglen was the trading centre at the Clyde, and coal and export and imports, and grew substantially compared to Glasgow. But obviously economics changed and Glasgow overtook. But I mean, Glasgow's a lovely city, I'm not...
It's an interesting story though, and it's interesting that you mentioned that presumably the river was part of moving stuff around and so on.
Part of the growth of the borough, going right back, there was a Seath's boatyard there who actually built boats which were amazing for their time, employed people. So Seath's now, I think it was called the Clutha. There was a few boats that really were revolutionary in their time. And Rutherglen was very proud of that, because before that it had been coal and it had been pottery and it had been, you know, things like that. But yeah, the Clyde was fundamental to the growth of Rutherglen, because of course then barges and boats were where all the heavy stuff got transported.
You had to move stuff around.
Yeah.
Before the railways. So now you we must be very respectful because you have a Medal of the British Empire. What was that? What did you get that for?
Oh, I was hoping you wouldn't mention that. I'm a liar. That came about because I divorced my first husband, Mr. Gerard Baird. So it stands for Mr. Baird's ex. No, I got that 20 years ago because at that time, the tenements in Rutherglen were dilapidated, as there were throughout the city. There had been a big storm in the 60s and there was aerial pictures taken, and they realised that they were ready for falling down. But also private landlords had bought over and not invested. So my very first house was a single end with an outside toilet. It was £550 and I paid it up at £5 a week to a factor in Bridgeton. And when I was at university at the time, on the bus, everybody smoked at the top of the bus. I was up the stairs for a smoke and I met this woman, Anne Rosengard, who was doing a PhD in housing associations. And she said, you know, there's money around to get all those tenements done up. I said, you are kidding. So before we knew it, we had a steering group, and before we knew it, we had started Rutherglen Housing Association, which morphed into Rutherglen and Cambuslang because their area expanded. And what we've done since then is spent £50 million. We have built new build houses in good areas, good affordable social housing for people in need, and we have renovated all the tenements, and it was revolutionary in its time. Rutherglen didn't start it. In fact, Reedvale and Denison were there long before us, and so were Govan. Assist architects, I think, started it in Govan. But what it meant was that the local community could have a say, have a voice, and have control of their own housing stock. Of course, we know that's really a myth, but you know.
But nevertheless, one of the things that's happened, some of it quite recently, is that a lot of the housing stock on the north side of the river has been bulldozed and got rid of.
Bulldozed?
Yeah, well, torn down.
Which one, sorry?
In Dalmarnock, I'm thinking.
Oh,
of
for new build.
Yeah.
But then you'll notice it's private developers, because there used to be a housing association called Brisbane Dalmarnock Housing Association, which went defunct for a number of reasons, which I don't really know, but I don't think they were good. And I think then you took them over, and then you's a big player, and they come into areas and soak up all the houses, which I hate. I like community-based housing. These are no longer, these are businesses now. It's a business. We can forget that nice, warm community. It's a business. And it's a business that doesn't generate profits. They call them surpluses, but indeed they are. I mean, I love housing associations, but they have changed beyond recognition. And for me, it has not the same ethos.
And in a sense, that's what I'm getting at, really, that the communities that live in a particular geographical location, they get kind of hollowed out.
Dispersed.
And
Gorbals is a prime example. Gorbals was a really, and probably is again, a really strong community, and a lot of Irish and Jewish people stayed in Gorbals. And the reason Irish people was you could get the Derry boat for 3 bob from the Broomielaw. In the first place, if you're poor, where you land, you stay. And of course, the thing about the Irish community is they supported and helped each other, so that, and everybody knew each other. So if somebody got a house, like my mother got a house in the close, my Auntie Lena got one up the stairs, my auntie got one round the corner. The community stuck together because, whether we like it or not, there was a lot of anti-Irish feeling then, and a lot of anti-Catholic feeling. But those people who came in the Gorbals was a wonderful community. And the thing about poverty and relative poverty is, it may have been impoverished, but nobody knew it was impoverished. We're all the same. So you weren't going around thinking you were better than others. And I think the schools, the brothers came and opened St. John's, and they had loads of ceremonies. I went to Irish dancing, very bad at it. I couldn't count to 7, and you had to. Irish dancing, my mother went to Flacchio's and went to Irish festivals in the Gorbals. So I have a great love for the Gorbals, because and the pubs, of course, I had been known to frequent some of the Derry Trainers and a few pubs. Not that I want my mother, God rest her, to know that. My mother was a pioneer. She abstained from drink all her life as a spiritual offering, but she'd never tasted it. She didn't know what she was giving up. She was a great woman.
And if the good Lord had not meant us to have wine, he wouldn't have,
I would be non-alcoholic wine.
What do you think?
Oh, it wouldn't be Lanlick anyway.
Where's the fun in that, Geraldine?
I was laughing. I was telling a group yesterday, we were talking about a piano. We had a piano. Everybody had a piano that aspired. My sister went to lessons. Now remember, my father was a labouring man out in the steelworks, and he worked all the shift gods, and yet my mother sent us to private school, the 3 of us, to private school, where you had to go into Paisley's and buy the uniform, which was expensive, and then the travel. I would walk down to the railway station in Rutherglen, get a train to Uddingston, get a bus from Uddingston to Bothwell, and walk down to the school. Now, I was 7 at the time. I know, but honestly, it was a different world. I was 7, my sister was supposed to look out for me, but she kept throwing my berry and Panama hat out the window of the train. And my mother must have paid 3 sets of fees on a labourer's wages, as well as keep the house. And she didn't work, my father didn't want her to work, but eventually she went back to working with Dr. Barrett, which would be the son and the grandson. We're talking about how we were reared. Never felt anything other than blessed. But then again, everything, I thought we had a wonderful, pleasant, happy childhood. And then in 1962, when the Cuban Missile Crisis came, we were all terrified. I remember as a child, looking around the church and it was jam-packed. And my mother says, it'll take something to get these guys out, But anyway, I digress.
No, but so I suppose the question really is how optimistic you are about the future of these communities.
I think when people get together of like mind, they form, what is a community? A community is a group of people who have the same ideas, or it's a group of people who like the same things or whatever. I think it's harder now because there's no history in communities of grannies and living round by all your relatives, because that went when the rehousing. And don't get me wrong, see when the Gorbals were cleared and people went to Drumchapel or Castlemilk, they loved it because all of a sudden the Gwains ran through the house saying, "Look, Mammy, there's a bathroom, and then there's a veranda. Oh, look at the view," and their own room. People actually, and I talked to my friend about this, and she said it was great in the 1950s in Castlemilk. You had the fields all around you. You could go and play. People looked out for each other. You had wee close concerts. So you've got those people took that community bit with them. But I think it's very different now, and I think it's because there's so many different cultures, languages. I think Margaret Thatcher did a great job of getting us all to look out for ourselves, and I think it would take an awful lot of work. Now we need, and we used to have community workers, people going into communities to start groups. That was never the case, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
But also people are working now, they're busy, they can't go to meetings, financially things are tough. All these things, but I think the community is still there, scratch the surface.
That's a good place to leave it.